All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining. So, Favor, you can go on, please.
Okay. Good morning. Welcome, everybody. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly.
All right. So, welcome. Good morning. Good afternoon. Depends on where you are. So, our housekeeping rules. All microphones off, raise hands to be unmuted, use the chat to also ask questions. Recordings will be available in a few days on Mautic Meetup Lagos YouTube channel. Youth is already recording, right?
Yes.
All right, so a brief introduction to what is Mautic. Mautic is a fully featured open source marketing automation platform which automates and measures marketing efforts, integrates and personalizes digital properties in all channels while delivering seamless customer experiences. Mautic solves some critical digital marketing problems that we have, such as website tracking, consumer scoring, landing pages, contact management, third-party integrations, email marketing, A/B testing, progressive filing, and a lot more. So if you want to contribute to Mautic, we have various teams such as the community team, the education team, legal and finance team, marketing team, product team. You can choose the team that you will be more effective and productive with and join them and contribute to Mautic. We have many things and various things that a new beginner, a new contributor, and old contributor can do. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is currently showing on my screen. So I'll start by introducing first speaker for today, which is Yusil Kadilia. I don't think I could pronounce that right. So sorry if I didn't get your name right. Yusil Kadilia is a Mautic and email deliverability freelancer that have deployed Mautic for agencies, and he'll be speaking on Mautic for agencies, large-scale Mautic deployments. I think.
Why don't you start, Floris, with your interest in Mautic and where you are from?
Hello, I'm Floris. I'm from the Netherlands, and I'm here watching you together with Molly. This is a little mall. And I'm interested in Mautic since it's nice open source marketing automation. So when I get it fully, I can tell my customers, do you want more customers? Or so that's why I'm interested.
Who wants to go next?
I can go next. I got into Mautic since I saw it. I guess it was a tweet from Dries or something. And then, I just read marketing automation software like open source. And then I started to say, oh, this is a really good combination with Drupal. I'm been working with Drupal for more than 10 years. So then I started to play around with Mautic 5 years ago. And then, I started to create the integrations and synergies between Drupal and Mautic. And now it became super hooked into Mautic. We are using it actively in our company, pushing it to our customers. And now we are actively contributing as well in the community. So it's exciting to be here. And thank you for the stickers, Ruth.
You're welcome. Favor, do you want to go next? Hang on, unmute yourself.
Okay, so my interest in Mautic is the fact that it's open source and it's a large community that embraces different people who wants to know more about Mautic. My main interest in the community itself. It embraces new contributors, old contributors. I personally was not on the marketing side, but coming to the community, I've gotten that interest in things that have to do with marketing and the rest. So yes, I like the community. It's a friendly community. That's my major interest in Mautic community. It's a really friendly community where you get to learn from people. I've met different people from different parts every time, and that's like we're doing now, talking about Mautic and sharing stuff and bonding. So that's my major interest.
Toby?
Okay, great. So what really got me interested in Mautic is that I was trying to look out for a solution that I can be able to use for free. And I will also help me with my first. I was looking for something around email marketing. Not until when I discovered Mautic, which I now discovered that it's even more. It can do much more than just sending email. Is an automation platform. So that really got me interested in Mautic, and I've always been part of communities. So and also I was interested in seeing a way of getting Mautic to be something that you can be able to talk about here in Nigeria and Africa as a whole. And that got me interested in being part of Mautic Meetup Lagos. And also, I always love a way I could contribute. And then that was how I also find my way being part of the Mautic marketing team. It's been a privilege to be able to, for the past few months, to be doing all what I've been doing with Mautic. And I appreciate Ruth. She has always been helping, and together with Radio. All right, thank you.
Cool. So we've got
Okay.
people. I'm not sure if you want to say a bit about your interest in Mautic, Mohammed?
Yeah, sure, definitely. So my interest comes in different places. Right now in the product mainly. I have several clients from corporates, like we send millions of emails a month, to smaller ones where we send like a couple of thousands a month. So I always help agencies in creating large-scale installations and making sure that they run all the time. And right now I'm just like looking up at bugs and features and trying to help the product team to introduce better experience with the Mautic system. Hello.
Great. We've got a couple of other people who joined. Frederick, you folks are going to be on mute. So if either of you, Frederick, Salud, or Lucas, would like to just share your interest in Mautic. Okay, Yossi, did you want to start your...
Okay, sure. Yeah, I thought you were telling me to start. I wasn't sure. So thank you, Ruth. Thank you, Olu, for giving me this chance to be on this call. So what is a large-scale deployment? So basically, we have two different possible options here, and one would be a single instance deployment where we have many thousands, maybe even millions of contacts in one single Mautic instance. And then we have multi-instance, which would be a smaller Mautic, a large amount of smaller Mautics. So for example, this is typical for an agency, for web agency, marketing agency, for SaaS companies that are including Mautic in their offerings. Okay, so how large can those deployments get? So I don't know, and really. What I know is that personally, I manage one installation that is 10 million contacts, so it can do that, but I'm guessing that probably it can do much more. Basically, we will see later the basic techniques used, so there's no reason not to be able to run many more. But it gets increasingly difficult, of course. So for these kinds of single installations, another typical question I get is how many servers do you need, or how many resources do you need? So basically, you could be running a large instance, not 10 millions, but let's say 500K in only one server for starters. And then you could start separating things, like, for example, the database. So you would have a 1+1. Also, you can start adding a second database, for example, a master-slave configuration. So you could have 3 servers, and then I use 2+2, but in fact, you could be using potentially dozens, and we will see later how that would look. So in multi-instance in deployments, it's very different. So basically, we don't have a huge installation that we have to manage, and we don't have to stress out all the components of Mautic. Basically, we are running quite standard Mautic installations, and we are running many of them. So here, basically, the idea is to worry about everything around Mautic. Mautic itself is not going to be really the main issue here. And here again, if we want to try to understand how many servers we would be, or resources or service would be we dealing with, we could start with just one single server, or we could be talking several dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of servers. Okay, so about me, my name is Yusuf Kadila. I'm a Mautic specialist, which means I do everything Mautic, consulting, infrastructure. I help companies to plan their deployments. Also, I do the deployments if they want me to. I do Mautic training. So if it's Mautic related, I do it. And you can find me on my blog, mautim.org. Okay, so let's get on into the actual topic. So first of all, we use in this market, in this marketing automation world, we use the concept of contacts as the measure of everything, and that's a very good approach to sell the product, for example, to marketers or the C-suite of a company. But really, for infrastructure, is a very bad metric. And the example that it's just a random numbers, but if you have 1 million contacts and Mautic is running 10 campaigns, you get 10 million processes. If you have a 10 times smaller the number of users, but you have 300 campaigns on this server, you get 3 times more load than you would get on the 1 million user server. So it's always important to keep in mind that the important thing, you could say it's more the database size, because that's going to tell you how many resources you need. And if you want to run all of or most of your database in memory, you will rapidly know how many resources you need. And usually that comes with a certain number of CPUs. So usually instead of using number of contacts, you use other metrics. And I found that the size in disk of the database is a very good indicative of how many resources and how many problems you're going to encounter. Okay, so how do we usually deploy a multi-instance? There's many ways to do that. So this is just a basic example, and and I'm going to talk about one way that I used for doing this, but there are many different ways. So basically, this illustration has a bastion, which basically is a HA proxy service that acts as both bastion, load balancer. It takes care of the security, it takes care of the routing, and it's going to take care usually also of the SSL termination. And then you have your Mautic instances, and then I've separated the Mautic instances from the databases. But this is just an illustration. You can have the databases in the same server. You can have it separately. You can have everything in containers. In my case, I usually have everything in containers. So basically, this is what the illustration shows. This could be also VPSs. It doesn't have to be containers. In fact, I know a couple of companies that use Amazon Web Services, EC2 instances, one for each client. It's a little bit resource intensive and can get expensive. Usually, I think it's better to buy or rent bigger servers and then you can slice those servers with the containers. And talking about containerization, usually you have the possibility of using KVM for virtualization, which would be, for example, the instances that you buy on any provider are usually KVM. But you can also use Docker or LXD, and there are many other technologies for containers. And then you are going to, as this grows, you are going to start to want to think about maybe clustering. Is not necessary, not mandatory. What clustering will do is that you can have many nodes on different physical locations under one unique network, private network, which makes your life easier. It doesn't really improve security or make things more performant or anything like that. It's just easier to manage. And like I said, there's many tools. You can also use things like Nomad, Mesos, OpenShift. There are plenty of technologies that will allow you to build this kind of setup. The basic idea is that you have the hosting servers. To the right are kind of dump servers, and most of the logic is going to be on the bastion. And then if you want to implement more dynamic connections between the servers, you can use sidecars or something, or sidecar proxies or something like that. But usually it's not necessary for most of the installations. And then you have to think about how do you want to deal with your databases. So depending on if you want to go for better performance or for more density, you have a few options to select for the database, which are all very important. So if you have one unique database, and then you can replicate it, but then you don't have portability. So let's say that if you want to start moving your Mautic instances or installations around, you will have a harder time if you have your database in just one location. So in one specific IP, one specific server, it's going to be harder to move. If you have your databases in containers, then each container with the database will have to operate one database engine. So then it gets a little bit heavier. So there's a lot of choices and a lot to think about this. If anyone wants to discuss this later, I'll be happy to. Okay, and finally, so we get to the single instance installation, which is probably the most interesting one. And I want to make a difference on different sizes of large scale. So what I think is large scale could be probably anything above 100,000 contacts. This is kind of, and please remember what I said about contacts not being a good metric. So that's why you have those ranges that are really, really big, 300K to 1.5 million. This is a huge range. That's because the contacts themselves, the number of contacts is not going really to define much. It's going to define a lot, but not everything. So basically, this is a standard view generic or generalized view of how I tackle those problems. So usually with the smaller ones, which are big but just not huge, I use a pretty standard installation. And basically what you're going to be doing when you grow to into this level, you are going to want to be turning your services. So basically, you're going to go to your PHP, you're going to go to your Apache, you're going to fine tune your database, and probably if you don't have it, you're going to add caching and then fine tune your caching. At this level, some basic tuning is enough. When you go to the next level, then you need to fine tune all the stack, including the operating system, and paying attention on the distance on the different components of your stack, or the different servers that you are tying together, for example, a Mautic server and a database server, how far they are, how good the connection is. If you are on EC2, you know that the IOPS of the disks depend on the size, so you will find yourself many times buying bigger disks than you need, or purchasing dedicated IOPS, which is quite expensive, but sometimes that's exactly what you need to make everything run a little bit smoother. So then when you go to the next step, which I just said here, it can be 1.5 to 5 million. Remember that this is just numbers, and what you have to look is really at the performance and the bottlenecks that you will encounter yourself in that kind of size of the installation. So basically you are going to start finding issues with bottlenecks in Mautic, and it's not necessarily a problem of Mautic. For example, the cron jobs, which basically are Mautic commands or Symfony commands for Mautic. They run only on one CPU. So no matter if you have 100 or 10,000 contacts or 10 million, it's going to be running on one CPU. Of course, if you have 5 million contacts, this is really a problem. So you have to start using queues. You start starting to have to use scripts to run things in parallel. For example, when we are dealing with campaigns, Mautic out of the box already provides a way for parallelism in campaigns. Sadly, we don't have yet that for other things. So if you have huge synchronization, let's say with Salesforce or any other application that are really large or that are intensive, you might also want to work with that, script that in a different way than the default way. What else on this aspect? Yeah, so we don't have that for segments, sadly. So segments is one thing that I usually script, not quite a lot, but I have to do it. And then we get to the big price, which is bigger than 5 million, right? And remember that you can have 5 million contacts and just be sending emails and have 10 campaigns, and probably you can run this with just a little bit of fine tuning. But if you have some company that is doing or planning on doing a heavy usage of all the Mautic layers and features, then it's going to get increasingly difficult. And the thing is that until now, even up to 2 millions or something, or 3 millions, you could just go click the button in Amazon Web Services in EC2 and duplicate the RAM, or buy a bigger droplet in DigitalOcean. And most of the time, it would get expensive, but it would solve the problem. When you get to the concurrency problem, it really doesn't help. When you get to the level where it doesn't matter if you have one CPU or 20 CPUs, because the scripts are running only in one CPU, then is when you cannot just purchase more server and get on with it. When we get to about over 5 million, for some cases it can be just 1 million, for other cases it will be 10. Then you really have another important threshold where you might be interested in looking at controlling some or most of the hardware if you can. And that's because at this level, the amount of operations that you have to do per second is high, usually very high. And then you're going to start finding out that the networked databases, for example, if you are using RDS, or if your memory is already too much to pay for it and you don't want to use everything in memory, you want to start using the disks, unless you preview that, unless you forecasted that in the beginning, and you have some instance hard drives that are usually SSD, NVMe or something like that. Now you have a problem. All your information has to travel over the network, first to be retrieved from the disk, then to go to your cache, and then to go to your database and come back. So when you control your hardware, you can have exactly the IOPS that you need with no cost at all. So usually this is a good time to think to move some or at least some of the infrastructure to dedicated hardware. Of course, you don't need to. So so this would be the way that you grow up. So growing up is starting it's not paying as much, it's presenting diminishing returns. So basically, you optimize what you have instead of making it bigger. But even that at some point, that's going to be a slight help, but not a huge help. So then you start thinking about breaking down Mautic. So and the rest, so I want to switch to the next slide. So I'm going to read this. So using multiple servers, we already discussed that. So replacing, okay, this is not this one. So you might want to consider replacing some Mautic components with other alternatives. So for example, you could replace the Mautic spool with something that's lighter and faster. Or you could ingest all the traffic that comes. So Mautic is not especially good at ingesting high volumes of traffic. I'm talking about the traffic that comes from your website, which if you have 5 million contacts, is probably to be high traffic. So then you want to put something in front of that in order to ingest all the data and then sync that with Mautic later on. So anyway, I'm going to go to the part that I think is most interesting. So we are now, Mautic is 6 years old at the time that was ideated. The concept of microservices was not extended. So basically we have a monolithic architecture, which means that everything is tied together and it's not simple to separate it. At least that's the definition of a monolithic architecture. But we have two possibilities here. One is to, so because Mautic is written in Symfony, and Symfony is a framework that's designed in a way that everything is an API. We can access parts of Mautic without using the whole of it. Maybe we cannot separate it. It's not that we can, it's very hard to separate the code, but we can replicate Mautic n times and then use just the part that we need. So yes, it's not a microservices. It's not a microservice architecture, but we can simulate that via the either using the API or either having a number of Mautics and using each of those Mautics for a specific purpose. For example, we could have one or more servers just running the cron jobs. We could have one or two servers for the UI, and so on and so forth. And well, that's something that I'm working on for one client, and it's really, really, really interesting. It's fun. They have already some parts that they kind of build themselves, and now we are figuring out the rest. So divide and conquer. That's what we're trying to accomplish now. If there are any questions or whatever.
Yeah, I have, maybe it's not a question directly, but it's a comment.
Sure.
So for example, you know, in some scenarios, what we are doing is segmenting the contacts in different Mautic instances, meaning that then you have, instead of having 5 million contacts in one single Mautic instance, then you have 1 million.
Yes.
And then you are pushing to another Mautic instance, depending on which stage or which segment of the, you know, of your you know, different contact categories, you know. So the idea is then you,
yes.
yeah, then you can split it. So what do you think about that approach?
Yes, it's a very good approach. What do you use for your database? Independent databases? So you basically
Yes.
cut down the whole, okay.
Yeah, we have five independent Mautic installations. And
Okay.
what we do is integrations between them.
How do you integrate those?
REST API, you know, with the connectors.
When you say integrations, what are you talking about?
When you use push to CRM, for example, depending on when you reach this stage, or this amount of points, you know, then you push the contact to this instance. You know, that's what we do with CRMs.
Okay.
That's what we do with other third-party applications, with Drupal and so on. But we do it between Mautic instances as well, you know.
Okay. So I would say that in this case, you probably already have a predefined range of IDs, so nothing mixes up, of course. But for other people that I may be thinking of doing something like what you're doing, I would say first think about how many segments or, you know, copies of clones of Mautic you want to divide your database. Make sure that you have a huge range of IDs that to separate them both, so you have forever availability for more contacts. I would say that so that you, of course, will have 5 separated or n separated Mautics, so you will not be able to see all the information in one place, but you have other open source tools that will help you visualize everything together. So it's not a loss, it's just that you might need a different tool. And for your particular case, I would say maybe think about sharding or about using master-master or multi-master replication. With sharding, you do exactly what you just done. You divide it, but the database itself is conscious of everything, so you can basically retrieve the data for all the 5 data. I say 5 because you said 5. So you can work with the data of the 5 databases just with one common interface, because the database is aware of it. And with multi-master, which is very, very interesting, and it's something that is growing very fast. You can have 5 database engines, let's say in 5 servers, but all of them are aware of the others, and all of them are master. So every single entrance is replicated to whatever number of nodes you have, and this is sensitive to the networking, but usually it's not a problem, and it's transactional. It means that you can write to one database and read on the first database and read on the third. The data is going to be relatively correct, because when somebody writes to number one tells to everybody somebody's writing to this, let's say, row. Yes, record. Thank you. And then all of them are going to be in wait position. So they will say, okay, the contents is 25, but wait, because I have an update pending. So it's not instant like with just one database, but it's very promising, and it's able to have all the data for all the servers available for any other server, if that makes any sense.
Great, thank you.
All right. Thanks so much, Yusu, for that. It's really, really good. I can see a lot of people trying to raise up their hand to ask questions. So I want them to wait till after we have Kelvin. I don't know if Kelvin is back. He requested for a few minutes to quickly attend to something. So
I don't have problems if you have questions now, or I can wait. So if Kevin is there, I can wait for later.
Okay, so I would prefer you wait so that we can be able to save time, so that Kelvin can be able to take his own part of the presentation. Sure. All right, so okay, since Kelvin is not here yet, maybe let's Yusu answer one question. I see Mohammed is raising up his hand. So Mohammed, I'm asking you to unmute so you can ask your question. Okay, great. Go on, please.
Okay, so my question is, you mentioned queuing up some services externally like email, and the second part we talk about is handling the income tracking events, which comes from the tracking pixel. What type of practices did you use for like spooling emails, for example? Right now, all the spool is happening on the disk. What other alternatives did you take?
So one thing so I never liked the Mautic queue, and I know documentation says that if you have a large amount of emails, maybe it's better to use the Mautic queue. What I like to use is the API. So I recommend SendGrid as much as I can. Now we are about to have in the official repository the SendGrid, the Amazon Says API. That's what I recommend. So you get rid. So you don't have any. You are not provoking any. I don't know the word. Atasco. Any. Too much things in one place. Clutter is not clutter. Is I don't know the word. Sorry. So yeah, clock. Thank you. You don't provoke any clock anywhere. So basically, the moment that the campaign or whatever you're doing says send this, is going to send it. So the campaign maybe can slow a bit down, but because it's API, not really. Anyway, if that's not enough or not a good idea. It's not too complicated to use very simple scripts for spooling. So you could use queues, but then you have more resources, and you have a queue will work more as a transactional engine, so it's more secure. But you can have just scripts that you install on the Linux server itself that take care of this part.
Okay, fantastic.
And it works well. It's very fast.
Okay, so just one more question before we move to Kelvin. Sid Ant, I'm on mute. I've asked you to unmute, so you can quickly ask your question.
Yeah, my question is regarding the LinkedIn integration. It is not working from so long. What is the issue, and when it will be solved?
So you're asking me if the LinkedIn integration works or not, or you're telling me that it doesn't work and when it will be fixed? I have no idea. Maybe Ruth can help you with that, but I don't know.
Actually, LinkedIn has updated their API version. After that, it stopped working, and it is not working in Mautic 2.16.3, as well as it is not working on the Mautic 3 version also.
Well, I would say, so Ruth will answer you better than I can, but I will say just wait a little bit, because everything is being refactored for Mautic 3. So the first version of Mautic 3 was just a cleanup of the code and an upgrade from Symfony 2 to Symfony 3, which also means that some things stopped working and some things were deliberately eliminated. So now we are going for 3.1, and with 3.1, most of the old code is being added and new features are being added. I'm going to shut up and give Ruth the word now.
Yeah, we wanted to have that in Mautic 3.1, but unfortunately we didn't have the developers available to do the work that needs to bring it up to the new API. So if anyone is up for working on that, the next opportunity to bring that in as a new feature rather than a bug fix is November. So we've got from now to November to fix that.
Okay. As well as there is one more question, that is, when I try to track my landing page URL via UTM tags, it doesn't come in Mautic. I can see those tags in Google Analysis, but it is not coming in Mautic. Some of them will come, but some of them will not. So what is the issue in that?
I wouldn't know. I would have to look. I would have to tail your logs and see what's going on to be able to respond to that. So if nothing is going on, so if no tags are coming, then it's kind of easier. But because you have some that yes and some that no, that's probably a tough one that you have to really dig in to solve.
Okay. Thanks, sir.
All right. Thank you so much. So quickly, let's move on to Kelvin. So let me quickly introduce Kelvin. Kelvin Rondo will be speaking to us today on segmentation and why they should all be produced by filters. And Kelvin works with Mautic in the trenches every day as a technical expert and as a marketing automation creation specialist. I would love to share some lessons learned about the Mautic way to think about campaigns and segments. So everybody, welcome Kelvin. Kelvin, you're welcome.
Hello, how is everybody? Sorry I showed up a touch late, guys, and wrecked the whole itinerary.
So sorry, Kelvin, before you go on, I really want to appreciate your time, that you're joining us this time of the day, 4 a.m. It's not a joke. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, no problem. I had an alarm set for 3:30, and clearly I do not listen to my alarm very well at that time. So I'm here now though. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'll step into Mautic kind of directly here. I've got a specific instance I think I'm going to share. So one of the things that happens for most of us when we first get into Mautic is that we go to make campaigns within an instance, and we very quickly realize that really the only trigger we have is segmentation, and that's a pretty big surprise if you're coming from any other automation software. So you can do form fills, and I don't tend to use forms at all to start my automations. Not that there's anything wrong with using forms, but the truth is, because of the power that segmentation filters give us, it's pretty much always going to be a segment that you're going to trigger on, because the segments themselves become your automation triggers. And so there's almost no segments that I create these days. There are a couple that I do that are super static. My suppression lists, so those emails you shouldn't be sending to, or anything you've used in another instance that is bad or a bounce. I'll sometimes upload those as a static segmentation list, and that one won't be built under a filter. But even simple things I build with filters these days, because I think especially if you're coming from one of the big low cost starter email automation, the email configuration systems. Active Campaign works where you have a ton of triggers for your campaigns, and then you do nothing with your list. And I think Mautic really, once you understand that your segment is who you want to talk to, whether you're doing dynamic content or you're doing email or you're sending SMS, you really start to recognize that each of these segments, it's important to know exactly who the customer is, like who you specifically want to talk to, who your audience is, who you're speaking directly to, from a marketing perspective. And so the power that comes from that is that you can easily get the right audience in the right place to give the right content or the right messaging to in a way that they want to, if you understand that everything's going to start from a segment in the campaign, and your segments need to dynamically generate themselves as time goes on. And then obviously, if you're already running Mautic, you realize that the cron jobs are important to this whole process also. But so if you're having a problem where they don't actually create these segments, it's almost for sure that a cron job isn't firing in the right timing or order at all. So I'm just going to create a simple segment that's like salespeople. So this segment will only have salespeople in this instance. This is a fairly new instance for somebody who deals a lot with automotive clients. And so I got their permission to kind of show some examples right here. So then if I went in by filters, I know that I've got position as an option. Position is title to North Americans. I don't know if it equates perfectly across for Europeans, but I know that this naming doesn't always work when you're speaking aloud to a lot of North American corporate people. And then I'd use contains. And then you can just type whatever it is. I'm going to type sales. That should give me sales managers and sales kind of across the board there. Apply that. And so what you'll see is now, if I wanted to speak just to salespeople, because I've got marketing people in here also, this segment will start to fill out. So I just want to kind of show the segment such that it is. Where is it? Salespeople. There's no context in there. My cron jobs are set to run a little slower, so I will. I'm going to just kick them off in the background here. So we should start to see these people added into this segment a little bit at a time. Give this a refresh. And so now we have contacts, and these are of the contacts I have. 2,000 of them have sales in their position title, and I'm starting to move into being able to contact them. And so you could then start adding points to somebody, right? So you use your point system, and then you can segment them using different criteria for points that push them along, or if they visited specific landing pages, or if they even visited specific content within your system, you can now kind of tag and flag as they move through your system. Now, if you start to build all these out statically, what ends up happening is you do pretty good, but it becomes a ton of work. And people who move between systems, you're not going to see them move the way you expect them to. And it's going to be very hard to trigger a specific action based on any specific action they've taken. So they've downloaded an asset. That's one that I've been using a lot for several clients. I mean, I don't have any assets in this one, but this idea, so if we come back to here, I mean, I'm going to leave this segment the way it is because I needed this segment later anyways. So the idea that if you have a person who's in sales and they downloaded your specific asset, now they'd be added to this list. And if they're added to this list, they trigger the campaign. Is better than trying to use your campaign to do all this dynamic segmentation management, because you know that everybody who qualifies or belongs to that group of people is going to be in the right segment, and they're going to move fluidly between them. I also use this to keep my segments cleaner to look at. One of the things that very often I'll do is I'll add qualifiers, like if they've unsubscribed from SMS, or if they've unsubscribed from email, and I'll put these in right away, and if that equals yes, or if that equals no, sorry, I leave them in. And what ends up happening is that you filter out all the ones that you aren't actually emailing anyways. It gives you a much clearer picture of what your list looks like. And that can be good in a list that has had either a bad bounce rate. You can get this idea like, oh, I had a lot of emails bounce here really quickly. But it can also help you just not have this, like, over time people have unsubscribed or people have got added to your do not contact list, and now they're all kind of like on every page when you're looking at the contacts. I find it much cleaner to get those people off into their own segment. I have a campaign that basically, if you get marked DNC, I then do a bunch of extra stuff with you. And if you bounce, I like to run a campaign that's actually about telling me this is your bounce percentages. This is like, so I kind of get more of an email set that says you had X number of bounces. And so I like to look at it that way, even though I can look at it through a console. It's nice when Mautic tells me right away. It's like you had a lot of people enter the do not contact list or your bounce list, your bounce segment. And so that's important to me from a perspective of working with my clients and seeing the data change and seeing the segmentation change. I haven't actually emailed out of this instance yet. That's why this bounce is at 0 contacts. We just have a small list that we're starting to speak to right away here, and that's why I asked him if I could use his instance to do this specific example. You'll notice I'm still on 2.16.3 here. This guy will be moving to 3 very, very soon, probably 3.1 to take advantage of the AWS SES API. But I had some issues with the hosting initially, and so I stayed here, and that's why that's here. But it's all the same. It doesn't matter. It looks exactly the same. And so my argument would be that when it comes to segmenting your list, especially as you move forward, you're probably going to start creating a lot of custom fields that you can use as a basis, and you're going to probably tag a lot. I find I use custom fields and tagging to do a lot of my decision making when it comes to how I'm going to segment filters, like filter my segments. One of the other things you'll find that you do pretty often is you sort of combine lists, and that'll often be with your segmentation. You're going to filter by segment membership, and you're going to say things like, I want to include anybody in the salespeople, and I want to exclude anybody who's from big dealerships or multi-dealerships. I mean, this is an example here because these are the ones I have. And so that'll give you that, like, that in between. So if I save and close this, and we watch this example filter, we come through, and so we see our big dealerships has this 1230. And so when I look at who actually ended up here after the cron job runs, and again, that's why this takes a second, and I'm fairly, say, conservative on the timing of my cron jobs. On these small instances, it doesn't matter, but if as I've found that things scale up, there's very few times I can't wait 2 or 3 minutes for some of this stuff to fire. I fire them all through a script instead of individually as a cron. So I have a little bit more control about getting all of them to run in the order I expect each time they're run. But as you get bigger, again, like Yosu was saying, there's considerations you have to make about the multi-tenant, so like the multi-server scenario, where just getting bigger doesn't make you more batterer. You actually need to think about how all this stuff is running. On top of that, you're going to find yourself, once you get into this scenario, that when you use or create component forms, what's going to happen is, instead of creating a campaign form directly, you're just going to create a standalone form, and the form action is going to include a modify tag, and this tag's going to be used to identify like where they came from. I tend to use like landing page for, so I give them a very specific criteria why they would have filled out this form as a tag, and then I create a segment that's generated from that tag. And then this segment, as soon as you join the segment from submitting this form, you end up in that campaign, which means that you've completely bypassed using your form submission, but you also get all the actions every single time on the form that you're able to use, which is really important to a lot of us. I have a small baby that is freaking out in the background. So I'm going to cut myself short there so that I can answer some questions if anybody has any.
Does anybody have any questions for Kevin?
Yeah, so where I'd finish with that, again, is like, I think what happens is, if you're coming, especially if you're coming from Active Campaign or, I can't think of the name of the other one I was using a lot. You have a lot of these, like, visited a page is a trigger, right? Or submitted this form as a trigger, or downloaded this asset as a trigger. And so you have to stop thinking about that as a trigger for a campaign and start thinking of it as a way to organize and sort who you want to speak to. And that's why I think you should always be using campaign filters. And if you aren't familiar with them, you're going to find you're going to be better at creating campaigns that land if you choose to do that. So you always are thinking about who your ideal client is, who that avatar is, and then choosing to put the data in the right spot. I think that's where I'll finish talking about that.
I have a quick question. Probably it's because I misunderstood or probably didn't get it. But how you are using tags to can you explain it again? You mentioned that you're using tags in order to know where your contacts come from. And with the tagging system, you can also not only trigger the actions in your campaigns, but also updating contacts in your segments or something like that.
Yeah, so if you use the form modify tags action, you can add or subtract a tag from whichever person has filled it out. Now you have to pre-think about these tags. So I'll have a specific landing page. If you have entered into automotive repair, as opposed to entering in through automotive sales, I will tag you as automotive repair, and then that will generate will move you through the filter, because I'll use an include tags as a filter on my segment, into whatever nurture I have for people who've entered into the automotive repair system. So now I'll send emails to only people tagged for automotive repair. And as they go through that nurture, that tag can either be removed and they'll be removed from the list, or they'll fall off naturally because of the end of the automation. But so instead of actually doing it from the form trigger, it allows me to also then later say, if they have an automotive repair tag, and they have these guys are special because they fit into both categories. It allows me to filter them further down the line. And I know you can do that at the campaign level too. But what I found is sometimes from a form, because you get much reduced, I'm just going to share my screen again. Because you get a much reduced amount of actions when you create a campaign form, let's just create a campaign form here, is that there's all sorts of things that I needed to do that I no longer could from the form, which is pretty, oh, I don't think I actually hit share there, sorry. So when you're on a campaign form, you only have these actions, which I found was pretty problematic sometimes. If I had specific things I wanted to get done, I found it easier to have all the actions from the form and to just use a tag instead of limiting my actions. Now that does prevent you from using it in some ways in a campaign, but I haven't actually found that limitation to actually stifle me. And I found this meant that I had to think a lot more strictly about what my avatar was, as opposed to what I was trying to do. Because what happens, I think Mautic thinking is much better marketing thinking. You end up thinking about your avatar over your campaign. Whereas a lot of the other ones, you're thinking about, what am I doing? What am I doing? And a lot of it's about what's that campaign doing, not who the person is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I never thought about that contact tags, used in this way, but I guess it adds even more context than segments. So it's a really good approach. Thank you for sharing, Kevin. It's good.
All right. Thanks so much, everybody. Okay. I don't know if any other person still have a question. Does anybody have a question? All right. So in absence of no question, I want us to quickly go for a breakout section. So in the breakout rooms, it's just going to be a way of discussing about how we use Mautic and what we've been able to learn today, and how we are going to implement it. So it's something not formal, so everybody is free to talk. There's going to be, we'll be breaking out into groups shortly. We'll be doing this for just 10 minutes. So after 10 minutes, we come back here to ask questions if we still have more. And then I'll be coming up to share a couple of updates that have happened in Mautic in the last 1 month. And then we'll go on to do the closing. So please stay back, don't leave yet. We would love to have you back after the breakout session. So sorry, I got disconnected. I'm so sorry about that. Okay, so quickly, let me share my screen back. So welcome back, everybody, from the breakout room. So trust we have a very nice time interacting. And the idea is that we don't just have the speaker only speaking, so we also want every other person to interact, just like we do in an offline event. All right, so quickly, I want to share my screen so that we can quickly wrap up today's event. So can we all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. So
Yes.
the major announcement is that we have Mautic 3.1 that was released last Monday. Interesting things for both developers and end users. So if you've not updated your Mautic yet, please do so. And then Mauticon is going to happen November 17th. There was sprint on Thursday. On great. Okay, great. All right, so I can go on. So we've been able to do question and answer. So quickly, we are rounding up. So we appreciate if you can join us on our meetup screen, on our meetup communities page. So you can just go to meetups.com/Mautic. Yeah, let me get the link. Yeah, meetup.com/Mautic-meetups-Lagos. So please join us and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. So this video will be, the recording of today's meetup will be uploaded on our YouTube channel. You can also find recording of our past meetups there. So please join. Please subscribe to our channels and then also share whenever we have events. Please also subscribe to the add the Mautic calendar to your personal calendar so that you can also get updates about upcoming meetups. And please, if you joined using the direct link to this Zoom call, we appreciate if you can join the community on Meetup so that when there are new updates or new information to pass across, you can always get information on time. All right, so this Meetup have not been only me. Favor did the introduction, and together with Favor, together with Victor, we've been able to put this together for this month. And they've been a wonderful fellow, and I really appreciate their time and their support at growing the community and also impacting others by giving back to the community. Thank you so much, everybody. Our next meetup is coming up next month, 26th of September. That is always last Saturday of the month, 11 a.m. West African time or UK time. Really appreciate you for coming. Can you please give yourself a round of applause? Thank you for coming. Bye-bye.